Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriela. I am an attorney from Brazil, and I am here today with attorney Joaquin Rosales-Aramburu, which for us Brazilian will call him Joaquin, right? And I'm here
Yes.
talking to Brazilians that want to immigrate to the United States. So I'm here with this very experienced attorney, and I want to address today what does it take for a Brazilian who wants to live and work legally in the United States to achieve this dream, right? So first, I wanted
Sure.
to start by asking Joaquin about his background, and so that you can understand what kind of professional are you dealing with, and then he's going to tell us a little bit about the U.S. immigration system. And so, hello, Joaquin. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Gabby. Nice speaking to you. Thanks for everybody who's paying attention to our video. Like you said, my name is Joaquin Rosales or Joaquin, if you like to say that in Portuguese. I've been an immigration attorney for a long time. I myself, I'm an immigrant. I came here to the United States when I was maybe 13 years old, 14 years old. Then I got a residency, and then eventually I became a citizen. So I know how stressful this process can be for anybody. So it's important to, work with people that know about this process and have lived through it themselves, just like myself. You asked me how can a Brazilian come over here? I know a lot of people definitely have heard about family petitions, and that's certainly one avenue, although it's not the only one. A lot of people believe that, there's very few avenues, right, or ways to come over here to the United States legally. One almost through a family petition, if you have a close relative, right, a brother or a sister, mom, a father, maybe a daughter or a son who's over 21 years old, who's a citizen, or even sometimes residents, depending on the relationship, they can do a family petition for you. It's a straightforward process, but obviously with an attorney, we're able to pinpoint if there's any issues, right, that can come up. So we have a smooth process. But those are not the only ones, right? We have several visas, right? Depending on what the person wants to do. If the person wants to be here only for a couple of years, perhaps doesn't want to live and reside here, there's certain visas, investment visas, for example, or even company executive transfer visas. It really depends on what you want to do, but I'll go over a few of the most important ones, at least the ones that lead you to a residency, right? So if you don't have a family member, for example, you can also do, like I said, an investment visa. Now there's two investment visas, right? One that gives you a residency, which is called the EB-5, right? There's a substantial amount of money that you have to invest, right? It's broken up into two parts. One part is an investment of a minimum of $800,000, and it's essentially you put in it in what's called a regional center, right? It's sort of like a fund. You don't really get to sort of control what's going on, but they'll give you a residency, and you can also do it inside of the United States now. It's something that you weren't able to do before. Eventually, you will get your residency within a year and a half, 2 years or so, and your initial and your investment also. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it within the EB-5 is to invest at least $1 million and 50,000. Um, but that gives you the ability to do any sort of business, start your own business, buy a new business, but it has to be an investment of $10 million. There's requirements for you to hire at least 10 Americans, right, to work with you for a minimum period of time. So that's on one side. On the other side, we have the E2 visa that unfortunately is based on the residency, I'm sorry, the nationality of your country. So if there's a treaty with the United States, your country has a treaty with the United States, an E2 treaty, then you'll be able to do it. The reason why I'm mentioning it, even though Brazil is not in that treaty, is because a lot of people have double nationalities. So if, for example, you have an Italian nationality, then you can do it. And you can just go online and look up, treaty E2 treaty countries, USCIS, and then you'll be able to find the information of the countries that have this treaty with the United States. The difference between the EB-5 and the E2 is that the money that you need to invest is much less than the EB-5, right? There's not a set amount of money that you need to invest in order to come to the States. It just has to make sense pertaining to the business that you're doing, right? So some businesses, they might need only $130,000, $150,000, maybe $200,000, but they're not, you know, you don't have to have such a huge investment like the EB-5 in order to get these visas. So the E-2, typically, depending on what treaty and reciprocity the treaty has with your particular nationality or the country that you're from, it could vary anywhere between 3 to 5 years, and you can renew it as many times as you like. Just like with the EB-5, you can bring in your family, your spouses, or children under 21. They can go to school. And for example, your spouse wouldn't have to work in the business, although a lot of times that's what happens. They typically are able to work in any other job that they would like to work. After that, we can move on to the employment-based visas.
Yes,
So
those
essentially,
employment-based are very famous here.
correct.
News are spread right here. And I would also like you to talk a little about maybe about the misconceptions, because I think people are hearing about the EB-2 and EB-1 visas, but a lot of people think they are very easy to get. And is that the truth? And so can you talk a little bit about what are those visas and what are the
Sure.
requirements?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we have several categories of employment-based visas. That's why they call EB, right? And typically, you know, you would need, for example, for an EB-2 or an EB-3, you need a sponsor. That means that you need an American, right, a United States company, right, that has no affiliation sort of with you, the ones who sponsor you for a particular position. So this is a prolonged process where they have to deal with the Department of Labor, and they have to get those jobs, but you weren't able to do it. Then you do the petition, the company does, and then eventually you can come here to the United States. But that's a little bit of a longer process. Within those employment-based visas, we also have what you said. I call them sort of talent-based visas, but there's an EB-1 and the
Talent-based.
EB-2. Yeah, EB-2 national interest waiver visa. And those visas, you do not need a sponsor, meaning that you don't have to have a company, although it's always good to have companies that are interested in you, because it's important to also have a plan of what you're going to be doing over here. But these visas are sort of like, you know, for the top level, very skilled professionals. You know, could be also in the arts, but, you know, mainly, you know, in the sciences, in math, medicine, also business, entrepreneurs. And, you know, there's two of them. One of them, the EB-1, the legal language is we're looking for people with extraordinary abilities, right? And for the EB-2, it's more of it's a little bit less of a requirement, right? A little bit tougher, but it's different, right? Because you have to demonstrate that you have exceptional abilities, not extraordinary abilities, but you have exceptional abilities, but it is in the national importance of this country. So I always like to give examples of, for example, you can have the best painter in the world, but you know, he might be able to apply for the EB-1, but maybe perhaps they wouldn't approve an EB-2 national interest, because it would be really difficult to convince the government that, you know, it's a national interest of the United States to have, you know, a really good painter here, right? So for these two visas, they have criteria that they look at least for the EB-2, you know, at a minimum, they're looking for a postgraduate degree, meaning after the university, if you have a doctorate or master's degree, or the equivalent, which would be after you graduated from the university, you have at a minimum of 5 years labor within that same field that you studied, right? So that's a minimum requirement, at least for the EB-2 national interest. But on both categories, you have to also prove, right, that you meet certain criteria. So the criteria that they look at is, for example, you know, if you have had a long experience in the field, you have, you know, people that can write letters of recommendation that have worked with you above you in projects or within a company or within, you know, a government project for at least 10 years, right? They've seen your work. They've seen how you impacted the work. They've seen how good you are at what you do. They also look at if you've received any awards, whether it be inside of your country or international awards about what you've done in your career, how you've helped your career. They're looking at whether or not you have special licenses in order to do the profession that you do. They're looking also if you're part of a member of organizations, right? Not just any organization where you just pay to be part of. You have to really show that you're above the sort of medium, right, level of people in your profession, right? That you're doing a really good job in your profession. Any publications, scholarly publications also are good to demonstrate that the work that you've done has had an impact, right? Whether it be in the media, also could be, scholarly articles, like I mentioned. Maybe you're in the press, you've written books, or perhaps other people, right? Fellow peers in your own field have utilized the materials that you've published in order to, publish something else or back up, whatever they're trying to talk about, in the publications, right? Um, Whether or not you're making more money than the average person in your career, if you're making a substantial amount, much more money, right, than any other person in your career, then that shows that obviously you're at a higher level. So there's a lot of criteria involved, but there's a lot of people who do have the opportunity to apply for these visas, right? What we try to do is we try to analyze the profile of the person and make sure that we at least have a shot, right? These visas are discretionary, which means that the officers make the ultimate, decision, but they guide themselves through, certain regulations that are in place. But at the end, they're the sole ones that make that determination, right? So it's important that you're really prepared. That's why we always try to have at least a professional plan or a business plan for our clients so they have a strong background and we're able to prove to the agent exactly what the plan is, what they're going to do over here, who they plan on working with, or they think they're going to start their own business based on their profession or what they do. And so we do a pretty thorough job of sort of choosing the people who really do have a chance of getting these visas. Because like you said, there might be some misunderstanding that it's really easy. I mean, nothing's impossible in immigration. You can always work on your profile, which is a good thing, right? You can always build, your profile, your resume better and shape it better in a way that eventually you will be a good candidate for these type of visas. So that's what we do here. I know I spoke a lot, but we also, for example, have other visas. I think I mentioned earlier, like the L1, and that basically means that you are doing a transfer of an executive, right, from a company. For example, let's say in Brazil, there's a company and they want to expand to the United States. So they want to send somebody to essentially run a new office, a subsidiary, right, office here in the United States. So then there's a possibility of sending someone to do so. If you already have businesses running in the United States, right? Perhaps you need that executive to come over here and oversee the business, help it grow, target a different market. At the same time, aside from the L1s, we also have, O1 visas, which are not a residency, but they're also town-based visas, but they're not sort of as high of a level, right, as the EB1 or the EB2. Depending on the country, that typically they give you at least 3 years. You can renew it, and musicians, athletes, artists, and also people who are entrepreneurs or technicians, or there's different sort of professions, right? We just have to prove, obviously, that you've excelled as well in there, and potentially there's a probability that we can get you that visa, right? So in general, there's a lot of visas, all right, that one can look at. It really depends on what they want to do, right? What they're looking to do. But the options are there. Their options are there for sure.
Yeah, amazing. So, anyone who is interested in work and live legally in the United States can definitely do your own research online or reach out to attorney Joaquin Rosales-Aramburu. Right? So you can evaluate the person's profile and indicate what is the best option for them. And I like what you said about maybe you don't qualify right now for any of those visas, but you can work on your profile and build up a plan so that you can be eligible in the near future.
Correct. That's what we do. Essentially, what we try to do is that, be as clear as possible. Once again, these visas are discretionary, but with our experience, we compare with other profiles of people who perhaps we've done who have been successful, and we work with that sort of particular industry, and we compare those profiles to see whether or not, you know, they have similarities that we can utilize. And that's a good thing. Like you said, you can always work on it on your profile. If we don't think that perhaps you're quite there, we'll give you tips to let you know what could, you know, sort of better your profile or your ability to apply for these visas. And that's what we do. We look at your resume. We'll look at, you know, the work that you've done, the education that you've had. You'll fill out a questionnaire that we have specifically asking you for these things that we talked about. And then we'll make an assessment. We'll let you know our opinion, you know, and obviously we go with what the client wants, but we want to make sure that they know sort of what we think the chances are of perhaps getting an approval.
Thank you, Joaquin. I believe with this video, people watching us can have an overview about the options that you have, and you can start thinking about a plan for yourself. And I encourage you to reach out to an attorney who can guide you specifically to what is the best visa for your profile. And I want to thank you, Joaquin. And I hope we can do more videos, because I know there is a lot of topics that we can explore.
Yeah, we can explore, you know, sort of different visas, you know, particular visas in each video. And then also, just so you guys know, we have also staff that speaks Portuguese. I don't, but I'm learning little by little. So, you know, so you feel comfortable, you'll be able to talk to someone who can speak your language as well. So thank you so much for the time as well. And we'll be seeing each other soon in other videos. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.